Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, I want you to do one thing. Tell me anything that is happening in this art. You can't, it's not possible. So, Psychic and Punisher is a new card that was released in the most recent set that basically gives P.U.N.K an actual payoff that's pretty decent. P.U.N.K being a psychic type, archetype that specifically utilizes its effects to pay life points to gain searches or summons or what have you. So, Psychic and Punisher, or P.E.P, is a great card. Let me read this card real quick. While your life points are lower than or equal to your opponent's, this synchro summoned card is unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. Not continuous effects, so things like Plasma or Skill Drain are still going to negate it, but something like an Imperm is going to do literally nothing. Cool. Also, once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points, target a monster you control and a card your opponent controls, banish them. Fantastic, a way to get lower in life points. Also, at the start of your battle phase, you can make this card gain attack equal to the difference in your life points than your opponent's. Basically making it a massive chungus that is unaffected by a lot of things and just is nigh impossible to deal with, even by battle. So this is a great payoff for P.U.N.K, who, again, wants to utilize its effects by paying life points to search out and do what have you. So, yeah, it's a good payoff. Also, for some reason, this is an 11, and guess what? P.U.N.Ks are adept at making 11s, so there you go. So let's quickly do the card by card. Starting with the P.U.N.Ks, we have two Sharkusai. Now, all of the P.U.N.K low-level monsters are level 3, are tuners, and have an effect that pays 600 life points in order to do something. Most of them search. This guy fusion summons. He fusion summons into Rising Carp, because I think that's the only fusion that they currently have. Indeed it is, but alas, he fusion summons nonetheless. Pretty decent. They also have effects when they are sent to the graveyard or some other weird effects. Most of the time, it's not all that useful. This guy, during the opponent's turn, you pay 600 to synchro summon a P.U.N.K synchro monster using monsters you control as material. It's not bad, but it does require a bit of setup, and it's honestly not all that useful. It's more useful if you specifically already have another Rising Carp or something along those lines onto your field, but it is something to consider going into if you maybe want to end on like Draco Berserker and then potentially go into this guy on the opponent's turn. Next up we have Wagon, which pays 600 to add a spell, and if your opponent targets or attacks one of your P.U.N.K monsters, you could draw a card. Just quick effect, draw a card. It's great. Another thing to potentially put on the field to draw into one of your many hand traps. Not too bad, but requires significantly less setup than Sharkusai. Next up, we have Madam Spider. Madam Spider has the effect to, if a card or effect that targets a card your opponent controls is activated, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and have its attack. So this one's not as useful. Again, not something that we would necessarily have on the field at the end, but none of them would be. But it adds a trap. Next up, we have Xiaomin. Xiaomin, when it is sent to the graveyard, boosts by 600 attack permanently, and, well, I guess it only targets P.U.N.K monsters, but you pay 600 to add a P.U.N.K monster. Now, this is great because a lot of the higher level monsters are just really good, and more specifically, Foxy Tune is the card that we would most often be searching. So, let's talk about Foxy Tune real quick. Foxy Tune discards itself, and then discards another card to special summon a monster from the deck. That's basically it. It's pretty simple, but it does discard itself for cost and then discards for effect as well. So do keep that in mind, meaning if it does get ashed, you're not having to discard 2 cards like something like Ixchel would do. Next up, let's actually talk about Deer Note, which is sometimes what we're summoning off of the Foxy Tune, but most of the time what we're summoning off of Carp. So, Deer Note is a level 5 that brings back a monster when it is sent to the graveyard. That's all it does, and it allows us to go from an 8 into an 11, which is very nice. Next up, we have we have Ogre Dance, which just is a search. You just discard it, you search a card. Pretty simple. Then, of course, we have 1 Ascended Thunder, because it's funny, and it's a 7, and it gives us easier access with all of our level 3 tuners into the level 10 Synchro pool, such as Baron. As for the rest of the extra deck, the rest of the deck, it's a lot of hand traps, the Double Veiler, Triple Maxi. Now, I'm playing Gamma instead of Ghost Ogre. Realistically, you should be playing 2 Ghost Ogre, cut it to a 40-card list, and Ghost Ogre is very good, specifically with Emergency Teleport, as well as Jam Dragon Drive. These names are awful. But, yeah, this card can search Ogre, and it's just better overall. So play that instead of the Gamma. We also have, of course, the triple Ash Blossom, double called by triple Imperm as well, and to round it out, the one Harpy's Feather Duster, which isn't a hand trap, but hey, it's there. As for the rest of our spells, we are playing the one Pot of Prosperity, the triple Instant Contact, which is basically just a way to get a level 7 monster onto our field by paying 1,000 life points. That's all it does. Ignore the rest of the part. You just special summon the Aqua Neos because it's a water and happens to be a level 7. Just that's all of that's there for. Next up, we have the Extreme Jam Session. We're only playing one of this because most of the time we want to see it specifically after we've actually used Wagon. So to search it and utilizing like Rising Carp and the like. So most of the time, it's not something that we're going to want to see all that often because it kind of is additional follow-up, right? And isn't going to be used on that turn. So once per turn, banish a P.U.N.K card from your graveyard to special a P.U.N.K from your hand, and if a psychic monster paid life points to activate its effect, you can draw a card. Now, notably, this means that if you go like Xiaomin, it gets negated, and then you can still activate your Jam Extreme Session in order to draw a card. So no matter what, you're getting that draw. It's pretty nice. This also works with Psychic and Punisher, who happens to be Psychic because, of course, he is. So there you go. Pretty nice. Honestly, you could probably play this out more than one copy, but it does make the deck a little bit more inconsistent because it's not really a like that good of an extender. It's more of a like follow-up or, you know, draw into hand traps, similar to something like Heat Soul is for Cyber's decks. Then, of course, we have the double emergency teleport. I think I said double called by the triple Imperm. And then, of course, the one surprise, which is just kind of a destroy card. If you have a P.U.N.K card, you pop a card on your opponent's field. If you don't have a P.U.N.K card, you pop a set card. So there you go. As for the extra deck, we are playing the 2 Aqua Neos because it is a 7 that can be summoned off of the Instant Contact. We are also playing the double Rising Carp. Rising Carp is pretty decent. You tribute this fusion summoned card in order to special summon up to 2 P.U.N.Ks from your deck with different names from each other and that are not level 8. So there you go. This basically gets us into normally Wagon and the Deer Note, but you could also go Xiaomin, you could go Sharakusai, you could go Mad Up Spider. Any of those are good options, but normally you will be summoning the Deer Note and the other one in order to bring it, in order to use the Deer Note's effect to bring back another monster after going into an 8 to allow you to go into an 11. Next up, we have a whole bunch of 8s. We have the Draco Berserker, we have the Adamantipator Dragite, we have the Chaos Ruler, we have Dragon Drive, which on summon searches by paying 600 for any level 3 Psychic monster. Also, if a card is activated in response to a P.U.N.K's card activation, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. That last effect barely comes up, but you do get to add like follow-up or what have you. We also have a bunch of 10s because we are playing the Instant Contact as well as Ascended Thunder to get us into the 10 pool, so Baron and Changing. We have 3 11s. We have the double Amazing Dragon, which is pretty decent. It returns cards to the hand as well as brings back a monster. And then we have the Psychic and Punisher. We're only playing the 1. We have the 1 Cicada King as well as the 1 Hope Harbinger because we're playing a bunch of 8s and 3s, so there you go. And let's hop into the duels and show you how this deck performs. Alright, so here we are going first, and is that driver in hand? Of course it is. Anyway, we are going to go for the Xiaomin since we happen to have it. We're going to activate its effect, we're going to grab the Foxy Tune, we're going to activate the Foxy Tune effect, and it goes through. Okay, cool. Now we're going to activate the Sharakusai in order to fusion summon into the Rising Carp. Now, out comes the Imperm. Now, notably, I mentioned that previously this card needs to be a fusion summoned card in order to tribute itself in order to special summon 2 monsters, but I didn't know that at this time. I thought it just needed to tribute itself, and so I bring it back thinking that I had the ability to do that, which is also why I didn't go into the Psychic and Punisher. Now, obviously, Psychic and Punisher would have been a million times better in this situation, because just ending on something would have been a little bit better, but alas, I didn't. But hopefully this Maxi and Ash gets me to the finish line. Let's find out. So we're going to start off with the Ash Blossom here because of course we're not letting them draw 2 cards, and out comes the Therion Disc Coliseum. Well, interesting. And Machina Redeployment. Okay, now we know what we are playing against. Honestly, we should be fine as long as they don't really have a good out to the Amazing Dragon. And Maxi resolves cool, fun, interesting, interactive gameplay. Let's see how this goes. So my opponent is going to go and they kind of do this like half attack. It's not quite lethal, it's not quite like a full out, so there's that. But they do get to now add back their Therion that they just popped, as well as bring out their Machina Citadel. Now, notably, what they can do here that they don't do is they decide to attack in with the Citadel instead of just popping one of their level 4s in order to deal with the Rising Carp, because notably this counts attack and not, you know, defense, so they could just pop one of their monsters, pop my Rising Carp, and then deal a bit more damage, which would have come up heavily. So, there you go. We also drew the Imperm, which is funny. We have the Emergency Teleport, we have Wagon, and we have Imperm, and we still have 3,200 life points, which is quite a lot. Now, granted, they have the Therion, but, you know, who cares? Out comes the Instant Contact as well for the draw, and we draw into the Called by the Grave. Now, I have 5 cards, because Cockroach. Cool. We're going to start off with the Imperm on their Therion, and out comes the, out comes Instant Contact in order to go for our level 10 play. They read what's happening, they're going to pop all of their monsters, and then proceed from there. Well, now I get to go for the Emergency Teleport, knowing that they have literally nothing. So we're going to go for the Foxy Tune here, and we are going to activate its effect in order to go into the Deer Note, because we haven't done that yet. We now get to go for the Jam Drive here, and I do make a little bit of an oopsie, but it's honestly fine because of what comes next. So we're going to activate the Dragon Drive effect. We're going to bring back the Xiaomin. We're going to go into the Madam Spider, or sorry, we're going to search out the Madam Spider, and then go into the Psychic End Punisher. Psychic End Punisher now notably gets to boost itself up by 6,000-ish attack points, technically 54, but yeah, that's now lethal. Psychic End Punisher, ladies and gentlemen, this is why P.E.P is stupid. Alright, so here we are going a second, and honestly this hand is pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. Imagine if we had a hand strap, but of course we did. Oh, they're gonna set 30 pass. Alright, we can do this. We draw Ogre Dance, which is pretty nice. During the draw phase, I'm going to activate my effect in order to special summon out the Wagon. I don't know why, I just decide to. Wagon's effect is going to activate. We're going to grab the Jamming Session and special summon Ascendant of Thunder. Now, their Torrential actually triggers my Ascendant of Thunder to gain 5,000. So, now we're ahead on life points, which is interesting. Anyway, we're going to go Jamming Session in order to special summon out our Sharkusai in order to go into Rising Carp. Out comes the Rising Carp. We're also going to draw a card because we paid life points and Compulse. Okay, well, we draw into the Ash, which is funny, and out comes Ice Dragon's Prison. Dear Atlantic, can I play the game? No, apparently not. Okay, well, at least now we know that it is most definitely Labyrinth, and they didn't happen to draw their Labyrinth card. So, there's that. We're going to just grab up our Xiaomin here because we can, and during the end phase, they are going to activate their effect in order to pitch the triple tax in order to go and set their big welcome. Or not big welcome. Welcome Labyrinth. They draw into Ariana, because of course they do, and they're going to go for the Labyrinth here. They're going to just go to battle phase, and I'm going to take 16. Fantastic. You'll love to see it. I like taking damage. It means that my life points are now lower than my opponent's. Fantastic. We're going to draw into the Deer Note, which actually sucks. We don't want to draw into the Deer Note. Also, we know that they had this set earlier, so the Ash Blossom comes in real handy here, but now we basically get to do full combo. So we're going to go and grab up the Foxy Tune. We are then going to use the effect to draw a card, and we draw into the Gamma. We're just going to pitch that immediately and go for the Madam Spider. Madam Spider is going to search out the trap. Then we are going to draw another card. My opponent realizes the writing on the wall and concedes. Yeah, at that point, we can just kind of do whatever we want. Alright, and here we are once again going second. I swear I went first a couple of times and they just didn't go nearly as well. I feel like going second is just better with this deck. And, oh, look! It's Phantom Knights. Alright, out comes the Danger. We're going to activate its effect. They pitch the Fog Blade, and Kagamuche Knight is normal summoned. Out comes the Cherubini. Activate the effect, and we are going to dump Seer. What did they... Sure. Oh, are we actually playing PK Fire? Well, out comes the Rusty Bardiche. They're going to activate the effect and get Effect Veiler. And then... yeah, that's... I mean, that's PK. Yeah, they did nothing. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to activate the jam Session and then go Instant Contact. We will then activate our Ogre Dance, which will be promptly ashed. And, okay, I guess that's not really the greatest. I'm going to special summon out the Sharkusai because it's funny, for no other reason. But now out comes Changing. Now, notably, Changing is very good in this instance because as soon as they do anything in order to banish a card, it just triggers my Changing, and then I get to deal with their entire board. I'll show you. So my opponent is going to, in the main phase, activate Lightning Storm, which is hilarious. That's all. It's just funny. Then they are going to activate their Trap to bring back their Rusty Bardiche, which also triggers their own monster, but it also triggers Changing, and now the game is over. So, I just wanted to show you that because it's funny. And we're back with the deck, and a lot of people have asked me, is this deck worth investing into? And to that I will say, no. No, it's not. Why? Well, there's a lot of URs specifically in the extra deck that you do need, most notably Rising Carp, P.E.P, and the Amazing Dragon, as well as the extra deck, or the main deck isn't exactly cheap, right? You need the extra Deer Note, you need things like Ghost Ogre, which isn't exactly, I mean, it is a staple, so it's nice to make anyway, but on top of that, you also need all of the other staples as well. You need things like the Draco Berserker, the Chaos Ruler, Baron, Changing, etc. And, I mean, these two don't really matter as much as well as this one. But all in all, it's expensive, and it's not all that good. Now, granted, I am not the best player when it comes to this deck. There are a lot more things that you can do with this, in particular, like going into the Chaos Ruler, knowing when to do that, knowing when to go into Draco Berserker, knowing how to play around with things like Nib, etc., knowing, like, when you should go for Baron versus Changing, and you know, how to use Rising Carp most effectively, and knowing actually all of the effects, and not actually, you know, randomly special summoning it instead of, you know, fusion summoning it and trying to use its effect. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that all in all, this deck is expensive, and it's not very good. If we look at a lot of the tournaments, none of them are using P.U.N.K. No one is using P.U.N.K. It's just not really worth it. Now, with Hulk, this was great, because Hulk has kind of covered a lot of the weaknesses of this deck. Specifically, you could go like Xiaomin to search Foxy Tune, to go into Deer Note, to go into like Chaos Ruler in other variants as well, which means that something like an Emergency Teleport is still pretty nice. And you can also go like Xiaomin and stuff like that in pile decks. But as an archetype by itself, I don't think it's quite as strong. The end boards are something like P.E.P and maybe Sharkusai in order to maybe go into an Amazing Dragon or something along those lines. Maybe you're able to go into Baron or a Changing, but it's not honestly all that interesting. And most of the time it dies to like a single evenly matched or what have you, unless you magically make Baron. So not a whole lot going for it. But the deck is interesting and it's very fun, and I definitely will be revisiting this in more of a pile strategy. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, a like is very much so appreciated. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.